Today is Saturday, September 2nd, 2023, and this is the Dunkley Report. Takia Young's family wants the police officer who fatally shot the pregnant black woman to be charged. Young's relatives released a statement through their lawyer on Friday after viewing police body cam video of the August 24th shooting. The footage shows an officer at the driver's side window telling Young that she has been accused of theft and repeatedly demanding that she get out of the car. A second officer is standing in front of the car. Young protests, and the first officer repeats his demand. Young then turns the steering wheel to her right, and the car moves toward the officer standing in front of it, who fires his gun through the windshield. Hurricane Idalia's fast track over a sparsely populated region means Florida's insurance industry isn't expected to take nearly the hit it has with previous storms, like last year's Ian. A state official who oversees insurance said Friday that in the 2 days after Ian, the state reported more than 62,000 claims, but there were only about 3,000 reported in the 2 days after Idalia. Residents of the region are trying to find places to live as they rebuild. They're also waiting potentially weeks for electricity to be restored after winds and water took out entire power grids. A one-time leader in the Proud Boys far-right extremist group has been sentenced to 18 years in prison for his role in the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol, tying the record for the longest sentence in the attack. Ethan Nordine was one of several members convicted of spearheading an attack on the U.S. Capitol to try to prevent the peaceful transfer of power from Donald Trump to Joe Biden after the 2020 presidential election. Prosecutors said he was the undisputed leader on the ground on January 6th. Also sentenced Friday was Proud Boy Dominic Pezzola, who got 10 years in prison and raised his fist and shouted, "Trump won," as he left the courtroom. Silicon Valley investors behind a secretive $800 million land buying spree got off to a rocky start with the voters they need to build a green new city in Northern California. A former Goldman Sachs trader announced Thursday he is the founder of a group that wants to build walkable neighborhoods in rural Solano County, northeast of San Francisco. Flannery Associates, LLC, is the single largest landholder in the county after quietly purchasing more than 78 square miles of farmland since 2018. Their secrecy has frustrated community leaders who have reached out for information, only to be ignored. The investment group needs approval from voters to develop farmland for urban use. A vision of putting an armed guard at every school in Texas is crashing into the reality of not enough police or funding. A new state law taking effect Friday requires all schools to have at least one armed guard at each of the nearly 9,000 campuses. The new requirement comes in response to a gunman killing 19 students and 2 teachers last year at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde. But scores of districts across Texas say they don't have the funding to comply with the law, and there aren't enough available officers to hire. An assistant high school football coach in Washington State who lost his job during a controversy over his public post-game prayers was back on the field after the U.S. Supreme Court held his practice was protected by the Constitution. Joe Kennedy strode alone to midfield on Friday night, knelt and prayed for about 10 seconds after his Bremerton High School team beat visiting Mount Douglas Secondary School 27-12. Police and private security guards were on hand, but there didn't appear to be any problems during or after the event. Kennedy last coached in 2015, and the school district didn't renew his contract. Last year's Supreme Court victory followed years of losing legal battles for Kennedy in a clash over religious liberty and separation of church and state. Some populated areas of Maui are looking at months or even years before their water systems are fully and safely restored following the wildfires that devastated the island last month. Islanders can look to recent fires in California and Colorado for clues on how long it can take to make a public water service safe again after severe fire. In Paradise, California, the town is still replacing service lines and some water mains 5 years after the Camp Fire. On Maui, the first water quality tests have come back within safety levels, but much more extensive testing remains, including in most of Lahaina, the historic city nearly destroyed by fire. Authorities said 5 people were stabbed, 1 fatally, during a dispute between men held at a jail in Atlanta that is already under federal investigation. The Fulton County Sheriff's Office said in a news release Friday that 23-year-old Davian Blake was pronounced dead around 3:30 p.m. Thursday after the stabbings at the county jail. He and 3 others were taken to Grady Memorial Hospital, while a 5th man was treated at the jail by medical staff. 5 people, including Blake, have died in Fulton County custody in just over a month. The county medical examiner's office plans to do an autopsy on Blake. An atmosphere of joy mixed with sorrow sets the tone for the start of the new school year in Ukraine. Despite schools being renovated, the educational process here is far from normal. Due to constant missile threats and air raid sirens, students are compelled to learn in bomb shelters and remotely. Many schools in Ukraine lack the capacity to provide a safe space for all students, leading them to implement a hybrid learning model. Under this approach, students alternate between learning at school 1 week and at home the next. An association that lobbies for healthcare facilities says President Joe Biden's decision to require nursing homes to comply with federal rules on staffing levels will cost them billions of dollars. The American Healthcare Association calls the staffing proposal unrealistic and says it'll worsen existing problems. The government says most of the 15,000 U.S. nursing homes would have to add staffers and keep a registered nurse on duty 24 hours a day. The move has been sought for decades by older adults and those with disabilities. But the proposed staffing minimums, announced Friday, are lower than many advocates had hoped. The nursing home industry opposes staffing minimums. Today's news was reported by the Associated Press. This has been the World News for Saturday, September 2nd, 2023. Thanks again for joining us at The Dunkley Report.